my dear students. Once again, I feel so happy to connect with you all with one of the most important topic in the cardiovascular system, that is the drug therapy of angina pectoris and myocardial infarction. And I am Dr. Arvind, working as assistant professor in Department of Pharmacology, Tagore Medical College and Hospital, Chennai. So we will start the session with this picture. So in this picture, I think you all be able to visualize a patient who's experiencing a pain in his left side of the chest. So why I've shared this picture with you is, so always any patient who complains of a left-sided chest pain, you should have many differential diagnosis in your mind. So the major cause of a chest pain is mainly related to the cardiovascular system and also equally shared with the symptoms of other systems. So first, in the cardiovascular system, the major cause of the chest pain is mainly due to acute coronary syndrome such as angina pectoris and myocardial infarction, and another diagnosis is aortic dissection. So always also think of the nearby organs which can also mimic sometimes of a chest pain. So in case of the pain with related to the respiratory system, one of the most common differential diagnosis is the pulmonary embolism and the pneumothorax. And another very common type of a symptom which also mimics like an angina pectoris and myocardial infarction is mainly due to a pain, mainly due to gastric esophageal reflux disease. So in GIT, okay, GERD and esophageal rupture sometimes may also mimic like a chest pain, and other unusual causes of chest pain may be due to a skeletal muscle, okay, a muscular pain, or maybe due to a anxiety disorder. So all these differential diagnoses should be in your mind whenever a patient complaining of a chest pain. So ask a detailed history and do a proper clinical examination and investigation so that you can come to a conclusion for the treatment. So today we will discuss about the drugs used in the treatment of angina pectoris and myocardial infarction. So what is this angina pectoris? So angina pectoris is a symptom complex caused by transient myocardial ischemia and constitute a clinical syndrome rather than a disease. So transient myocardial ischemia can be due to either this one or both, that is obstruction of the coronary blood flow by an atheroma or a coronary arterial spasm. So it usually occurs when there is a imbalance between a myocardial oxygen supply and an increase in myocardial oxygen demand. So usually the clinical manifestations in patients with angina pectoris is most frequently the patient will be having a suffocating substernal pain in the chest over the heart on exertion, which may radiate to the left arm, neck, or the jaw. As I already said, the other causes of a chest pain, but a typical angina pectoris pain will usually radiate to the left arm, neck, or the jaw. So, and also the discomfort usually abates when the supply becomes adequate for the demand, and typically angina and anginal pain will last for few seconds to minute and sometimes even up to 15 minutes. So if we look at the major cause or the factors affecting the myocardial oxygen delivery, so this pain usually occurs when there is a decreased oxygen supply to the heart or an increased oxygen demand, and the causes of decreased oxygen supply are coronary atherosclerosis, coronary vasospasm, and coronary thrombosis. And an increased oxygen demand occurs either due to an increase in heart rate, a ventricular hypertrophy, or an increase in ventricular contractility and increase in ventricular wall tension. So there are mainly three types of angina, and the most common type of angina is a classical or a stable angina, and the second common type is a crescendo or unstable angina, and the third is a a variant or a Prinzmetal angina. Then what is myocardial infarction? Myocardial infarction is a ischemic necrosis of a portion of a myocardium due to acute and complete occlusion of the coronary artery due to a coronary thrombosis. So the major difference between an angina pectoris and myocardial infarction is, in angina pectoris, usually there is a partial myocardial ischemia, and in myocardial infarction there is a complete block. Okay, so angina is a partial ischemia, and in myocardial infarction there is a complete block of the coronary artery. So going on to the first type, that is the stable angina, which is a common form, and the other names, it's also termed as exertional angina, a typical or classic angina, angina of effort or atherosclerotic angina. So the underlying pathology is very common due to atherosclerosis, which may result in reduced oxygen delivery, giving rise to ischemia under conditions where the workload of the heart increase. Okay, so whenever there is an increase in workload, there is an increase in myocardial oxygen demand. Okay, so it can be precipitated by exercise or extreme cold, and even sometimes because of the stress, emotion, or excessive eating, especially in patients with obesity. So our ultimate therapeutic goals of the treatment must, by increasing the myocardial blood flow and decreasing the cardiac load and decreasing the heart rate. So the second type is unstable angina, also called as pre-infarction angina or a crescendo or angina at rest. It is caused by recurrent episodes of small platelet clots at the site of the ruptured atherosclerotic plate, which can also mainly precipitate due to local vasospasm, and it is mainly associated with myocardial infarction. So here the therapeutic goals is, by inhibiting the platelet aggregation and the thrombus formation, decreasing the cardiac overload, and by dilating the coronary arteries. And the third common type is okay, it is almost a rare type of an angina called as a vasospastic and or a Prinzmetal angina, which is mainly caused by transient vasospasm of the coronary vessels. So here the attack occurs even at rest or during the sleep, and it is usually associated with underlying atheromas, abnormally reactive or hypertrophic segments in the coronary artery, and chest pain may develop even at the rest. Okay. So even though it is uncommon, it is a most dangerous form of angina. So the therapeutic rationale here is, we have to decrease the vasospasm of the coronary vessels, either by using a calcium channel blocker or by increasing the oxygen delivery to the heart. So the ultimate aim of our treatment in myocardial infarction is to increase oxygen supply and to decrease the oxygen demand. So we can increase the oxygen supply by restoring the coronary blood flow, and by relieving the vasospasm with means of a drugs, so which we are going to discuss in our upcoming slides, and break the thrombus using the thrombolytic agents, and by preventing the thrombus formation by using antiplatelet drugs. And another important aim is to decrease the oxygen demand. It can be done by reducing the workload on the heart, by reducing the preload, by decreasing the afterload, and by decreasing the heart rate and the myocardial contractility. So going on to the classification, so the first important thing for any topic in pharmacology is to memorize the classification. So anti-anginal agents are again one of the most important essay question. So you have to memorize all the drugs which is found to be helpful in angina. Okay, the first common type of drugs are the nitrates. So it is mainly categorized into short-acting and long-acting. So short-acting glyceryl trinitrate or nitroglycerin. So never forget this glyceryl trinitrate. In short, called as a GTN, which is one of the most drug of choice in case of acute angina. Okay, since because it is one of the short-acting and a rapid-acting drug in angina. And the second categorized is the long-acting organic nitrates such as isosorbate dinitrate, isosorbate mononitrate, erythritol tetranitrate, and the penta-erythritol tetranitrate. Okay, so the second group of drugs are the calcium channel blockers, that is the verapamil, diltiazem, nifedipine. So it is easy to remember, any calcium channel blocker ends with a dipine, okay, with the term dipine. So The verapamil and the diltiazem are the other group of calcium blockers which is found to be more helpful in angina. And third is the beta adrenergic blockers such as the propranolol, metoprolol, atenolol, pronolol, and the bisoprolol, celiprolol. So cardioselective beta blocker are found to be more helpful in angina pectoris. So the other group of drugs are also called as newer anti-anginal agents. And again, it's a very important short note. So, okay, they are categorized as a potential openers such as nicorandil, cytoprotective agents such as trimethazidine and the ranolazine, antiplatelet drugs, aspirin, ticlopidine, clopidogrel, dipyridamole, cilostazol, and the bradycardic drug ivabradine and HMG-CoAs reductase. You all know about the statins and the drugs for the peripheral vascular disease. It is not used in angina, but it is mainly a vasoconstrictor. Okay, so again, here this causes vasodilation. So we'll discuss about the first important group, about the nitrates. So organic nitrates or the polyalcohol esters of nitric acid, and the glyceryl trinitrate, as already said, short-acting and long-acting isosorbide, dinitrate and mononitrate. So look at the pharmacological action. The first important is the preload reduction. So this causes dilatation of the veins more than the arteries, and there is a peripheral pooling of the blood because of dilatation in the peripheral arteries and the vessels, and as I already said, it mainly dilates the veins when compared to arteries, so thereby it reduces the venous return to the heart, and also there is a reduction in the preload by decreasing the diastolic and diastolic volume and thereby decreasing the cardiac fiber length. And second is afterload reduction, some amount of the arterial dilatation which causes decrease in the peripheral vascular resistance, thereby causing afterload reduction and reduction in the cardiac work, which also causes fall in the blood pressure. And the standing posture usually causes pooling of the blood in the legs, and there is a reflex tachycardia, and this can be prevented by lying down on the foot and rising. And however, in large doses, the opposite happens where there is a marked fall in BP, reflex tachycardia, increase in the cardiac work, and the precipitation of angina. And the third, increase in myocardial perfusion. So there is a redistribution of the coronary blood flow which facilitates the entry of blood into the ischemic area. And however, the total blood flow in the coronary vessels is almost unchanged with the nitrates. And the mechanism of angina relief by the nitrate is it mainly acts by causing coronary vasodilatation, reduction in the cardiac load, and increased exercise tolerance. Other actions are cutaneous vasodilatation, which may result in flushing, and it may the headache. Okay, very common side effect is mainly due to the meningeal vessel dilatation and decrease. The splanchnic and renal blood flow also occurs, and it is a compensatory mechanism due to vasodilatation by the organic nitrates. And the bronchi, biliary tract, esophagus are also mildly relaxed, and the effect of intestine, uterus is variable and insignificant. And remember, nitrates relaxes the smooth muscles in a simple term. So mechanism of action, so nitrates mainly releases nitric oxide, and this nitric oxide activates the guanylate cyclase which converts the GTP to cyclic GMP, and this cyclic GMP causes mainly two actions. One is the dephosphorylation of the myosin light chain kinase and also relaxation of the intracellular calcium level. Okay, it reduces the intracellular calcium level, causing relaxation of the smooth muscle. So this is a major mechanism of action of the nitrates. So pharmacokinetics of nitrates is very important. That's why I made it as a separate slide. And all these nitrates are highly lipid soluble and absorb well from the buccal mucosa, oral cavity, and from the skin. And hepatic first pass metabolism is high, and oral bioavailability is low for the nitroglycerin isosorbate dinitrate. And sublingual transdermal avoids the first pass effect, which you already would have heard about this. And thiazobutadiene, okay, mononitrate is not subject to first pass and 100% available after oral administration. So this I made it as a okay. So I the dose, onset of action, and the duration of action about the different types of nitrates. So I made it as a single slide. So remember, most important about the nitroglycerin, it is almost given in 4 routes. Okay, sublingual, oral, ointment, and also in the transdermal route. Okay, so it is found to be helpful in all the route, and also a nasal spray form is also available, which is not usually commonly used because The sublingual route is usually preferred because of rapid action, and in patients with unconscious, you can use a nasal spray. And isosorbate dinitrate, mononitrate, and the tetranitrate are usually given as a prophylactic and in the treatment of angina. So therapeutic uses, as I already discussed, angina pectoris mechanism, everything I've explained. It mainly reduces the myocardial oxygen demand, relaxes the smooth muscle of the epicardial coronary arteries, and in myocardial infarction, okay, so it is for in IV administration. It reduces chest pain, congestion of the chest, and reducing the infarct size. And nitrates are also found to be useful in congestive heart failure and acute left ventricular failure, and it acts by reducing both the preload and afterload. And as I already said, it relaxes the the biliary smooth muscle, so it is also helpful as a spasmolytic in patients with the biliary colic and esophageal spasm. It acts by reducing the esophageal tone, in achalasia cardia. And another important use of the nitrates is in the cyanide poisoning. It is again one of the most important short notes for you in MBBS. So, the drug of choice for cyanide poisoning, is the nitrates, amyl nitrate and the sodium nitrate. It's even asked in the NEET 1 mark question. So I will explain you the mechanism. So usually the cyanide poisoning, it acts by reducing the oxygen absorption, or else oxygen utilization by the cells. Cyanide usually does not affect the oxygen carrying capacity of the cells. It reduces the oxygen utilization of the cells. So you all know, ultimately decrease in oxygen utilization by the cells results in complete tissue anoxia, not in hypoxia, anoxia. So how this the nitrate acts. So the hemoglobin is converted to methemoglobin with the help of amyl nitrate and the sodium nitrate, and the cyanide combines with the non-toxic methemoglobin and get converted to cyanomethemoglobin, and this cyanomethemoglobin is rapidly converted to sodium thiosulfate with the help of IV sodium thiosulfate administration, and thereby this helps in excretion, complete excretion of the cyanide from our body via the urine. It is excreted by the kidney. So the drugs used are the amyl nitrate and the sodium nitrate. So this is the thing you have to remember from this slide. So adverse effects. So how many uses it has, and also equally it has the adverse effects because of excessive vasodilatation. Orthostatic hypotension occurs, and tachycardia, severe throbbing headache because of cutaneous vasodilatation, and dizziness, flushing, and syncope also occurs because of an acute vasodilatory effect. And methemoglobinemia and rashes occur rarely, and it is also contraindicated in patients with intracranial pressure. So one of the most important drug interaction is with the sildenafil and other phosphodiesterase inhibitors, mainly used for erectile dysfunction, because it can potentiate the action of the nitrates because they inhibit the breakdown of the cyclic GMP. And the nitrate tolerance, again, it is an important short notes, also called as a Monday disease. It occurs mainly because of the continuous or frequent exposure to the nitrates, leading to development of complete tolerance. The mechanism, it is not completely understood, and based on the literature, it may be related to the enzymes involved in converting the nitrates to nitric oxide, or to the enzyme that produces cyclic GMP, and an industrial exposure to the organic nitrates. As already said, Monday disease, and that is mainly because of physical dependence occurring in 1 to 2 days after the withdrawal. So going on to the second important group used in angina, or the calcium channel blockers. So mechanism, I think it have been already explained in detail to you in the drugs used for hypertension. So so I will want to discuss only about the therapeutic effects in angina. So drugs I already said, the drugs ends with the dipin, and the other drugs are verapamil, diltiazem. So they act here by improving oxygen delivery to the ischemic myocardium by vasodilating the coronary arteries, and also particularly useful in vasospastic angina, and they also reduce the myocardial oxygen consumption by decreasing the afterload. Adverse effects. So the dihydropyridines and dihydropyridines are two types, and dihydropyridines immediate release forms such as the nifedipine causes palpitation, flushing, ankle edema, hypotension, drowsiness, diuresis, and higher incidence of frequency of angina, and also sometimes occurs with the dihydropyridine. So Okay, that is the reason why non-dihydropyrids such as daratamab and diltiazem are the first line calcium blockers used here. Okay, and a recent study has also shown that nifedipine also increases the mortality in patients with myocardial ischemia and cause increase in angina frequency, mainly because of a rapid bringing down of the blood pressure in cerebral ischemia. That is a major reason, and that is the reason why nifedipine, okay, initially sublingual 10 milligram was found to be helpful in the majority of patients angina, and mainly because of a rapid reduction in BP. It is not frequently used nowadays in the sublingual route. Okay, this is mainly related to dihydropyriditis, whereas non-dihydropyriditis is still found to be effective. So the third important group is the beta blockers. So they mainly block the beta 1 or a beta 2 receptor, and sometimes both of them, and antagonize the effect of catecholamines. So common example are the propranolol, metoprolol, latenolol, and bisoprolol, celiprolol, and that is the reason why we mainly choose a selective a selective beta 1 blocker or a cardiac selective blocker mainly for the beneficial effects. And so they are found to be helpful, especially in angina prophylaxis. They act by reducing the workload on the heart, and it also diminishes the myocardial oxygen demand and increases the excess tolerance. And the judicious combination of propranolol and thiazide nitrate is able to prevent attacks of angina in nearly 85% of the patient. And usually, it should not be used in patients with the Prince metal angina. Adverse effects, cardiovascular such as bradycardia, heart block, and may also precipitate congestive cardiac failure, and respiratory, mainly the bronchospasm because of the blockage of the beta 2 receptor in the lung, and that is the reason we mainly can prefer a cardioselective beta blocker, so that it can also be used in patients with bronchial asthma. And CNS, it causes sleep disturbance, hallucination, and fatigability, metabolic, and it may mask the hypoglycemia because in CNS also it may affect mimic as a tremors. Okay, so it may mimic the effects of the hypoglycemia, muscular weakness, and withdrawal symptoms can occur. So combination therapy is usually preferred in angina pectoris. So nitrates and the beta blockers. So this mechanism, as I already explained, I don't want to go in depth once again. And the second most combination are the nitrates with the nitrates with the beta blockers, as well as with the calcium channel blockers, and the calcium channel blockers in combination with the beta blockers. So these are the three most important combinations which are found to be effective in angina. Whereas the very common combinations are the triple therapy. That is the nitrates, and the beta blockers and the calcium channel blockers, which is found to be effective in severe and the resistant cases, and also found to be useful in unstable angina. Okay, so pharmacotherapy, so it is mainly useful in the prevention of individual attack. The short-acting GTN at a dose of 0.3 to 0.6 milligrams sublingual is found to be effective, and the tablet has to be it has to be spitted off unless if the patient develop hypotension. And also in acute prophylaxis of angina, GTN can be given 15 minutes before a period of increased activity, and in a chronic prophylaxis, as I said, it can be used as a combinational therapy. Okay, so going on to the newer drugs, the first is the nicardil. So it is a newer anti-anginal agent which acts by activating the ATP sensitive potassium channels and hyperpolarizes the vascular smooth muscle. It reduces the preload and afterload and also produces coronary vasodilatation. It combines an activation of the potassium channel opening with the nitric oxide donor action. So it is used to treat vasospastic and chronic stemmal angina at a dose of 10 to 20 milligram twice daily. And adverse effects remains the flushing, palpitation, dizziness, and headache. Second important newer group is the trimetazidine, which is a newer selective calcium channel blocker. It mainly a type of cellular anti-ischemic drug which has a cytoprotective effect on the myocardial energy metabolism. That is the reason it is also categorized as a cytoprotective mechanism. It acts by preventing the degradation of membrane unsaturated fatty acid by lipid peroxidation and reduces the myocardial oxygen demand. Also act by inhibiting the superoxide cytotoxicity to protect myocardium from the harmful effect of ischemia. Okay, it is indicated in stable and infarction sequelae. And the third important newer drug is the ranolazine. It also acts by producing cytoprotective effect by inhibiting the late inward sodium current during ischemia and by reducing the calcium overload in the cardiac muscle. and it can be safely combined calcium channel blockers, beta blockers, and nitrate at a dose of 500 milligram twice daily. And adverse effect mainly causes prolongation of the QTC interval. So before initiating ranolazine, so an ECG must be taken, and the patient who already has a variation in the QTC interval should not be initiated therapy with this ranolazine. And evaporadine, again a newer group. All these newer group can be asked separately in the short notes. It acts by blocking hyperpolarization activated IF current, sodium, a channel which is mainly present in the SA node. So it acts by reducing the myocardial oxygen demand and decreases the heart rate. Advantages: it has no negative inotropic effect and no rebound or cessation of therapy. And the most common adverse effect is unusual disturbance in the nocturnal vision with the adverse effect of a flashing light. So that is the reason with ophthalmic disturbances, this drug has to be stopped immediately, and it can be the treatment should be initiated with other type of drugs. So antiplatelet, so low dose aspirin. So you all know aspirin has many mechanisms and many clinical uses, and in angina, the low dose aspirin should be used in patients with angina pectoris, that is from 75 to 325 milligram daily. And ticlopidine, clopidogrel, and the prasugrel, all three acts by inhibiting the ADP pathway of the thrombocytes and reducing the platelet aggregation, and used as a prophylactic agent in unstable angina. And cilostazol, which is a phosphodiesterase inhibitor, mainly useful in the peripheral vascular disease. And the last group is a dipyridamole. Early, it was one of the most effective drug in angina, and the major problem it is not used nowadays is mainly because of the coronary steal phenomenon, because it mainly diverts the blood to the other areas instead of increasing the blood supply to the ischemic area. So there is increase in the mortality in patients with dipyridamole. So that is the reason why it is not frequently used nowadays. So statins such as HMG-CoA reductase inhibitors, so atorvastatin, rosuvastatin, as I already said, atherosclerosis is one of the most important cause of angina pectoris and myocardial infarction. So it acts by helping in the regression of the atherosclerotic plaque by improving endothelial function, stabilizing platelets, or by inhibiting inflammatory response associated with atherogenesis. So mechanism of statins in angina pectoris. So this is again one of the most important question. In the short notes and also with the 1 mark. So it improves endothelial function, stabilizing platelets, or inhibiting inflammatory response. So I just want to add a few points about the drug therapy of myocardial infarction. So myocardial infarction is again it is a very big topic, so I don't want to discuss in detail. So about the symptoms and the signs, because I think majority will be aware about this. So I'll just concentrate on the treatment of this myocardial infarction. So it mainly results from the prolonged myocardial ischemia, which is mainly precipitated most of the cases by occlusive coronary thrombosis, and myocardial infarction may also result from prolonged vasospasm, inadequate myocardial blood flow, embolic occlusion, vasculitis, or a coronary artery dissection. So if we're going on to the drug therapy, again antiplatelets, all patients with MI should receive aspirin at a dose of 160 or 320 milligram, irrespective of the thrombolytic therapy initiated, and the patient having allergy with aspirin can be treated with other antiplatelets such as the clopidogrel. And second most important is the thrombolytic therapy. It reduces the mortality and limits the infarct size in patients with acute MI. So the very common drugs used are the streptokinase, urokinase, newer RTPAs such as anistrapase, altiplase, and the reticlase and the tenecteplase, mainly useful as an IV infusion. So nitrates is also one of the agent of choice in MI. It acts by limiting infarct size, and beta blockers such as metoprolol reduces the infarct size, preventing reinfarction, reduces duration of ischemia, incidence of ventricular fibrillation. And AC inhibitors such as lisinopril, ramipril are also one of the most important drugs useful in myocardial infarction. Helps by remodeling of it mainly prevents the remodeling of heart, reduces the chances of subsequent so heart failure, and improves survival. Anticoagulants, you all know, again most important group here, heparin. 5,000 units every 12 hours can be given subcutaneously, and newer heparin such as dalteparin and enoxaparin is usually preferred nowadays. So this is a general management of myocardial infarction. So start, any patient with MI, you have to start with a low flow oxygen therapy. and patient will be experiencing severe chest pain. So opioid analgesics such as morphine or pethidine can be given in IM or IV with an antiemetic because vomiting is one of the most common adverse effects. So an ondansetron 8 milligram can be given IV along with this. And diazepam and alprazolam can be given in patient to reduce anxiety. Dopamine dopamine can be given, okay, especially as an IV infusion to maintain the cardiac profile. And lignocaine can be given in case of arrhythmias, and atorvastatin, rosuvastatin usually added with associated hyperlipidemia. So what is important from all these? So these are the most important questions which is asked in the university. So mechanism, therapeutic areas of nitrates, role of nitrates in angina pectoris, role of beta blockers and calcium channel blockers in angina pectoris, pharmacotherapy of angina pectoris, pharmacotherapy of mitral infarction, potassium channel opener. So all the newer anti-anginal drugs can be asked individually as a short notes, and with related to the essay. Nowadays essays are asked only based on the clinical scenarios. So okay, first you memorize the classification, and it's most important for you to know about the mechanism of action and clinical uses and also the adverse effects. Okay, since because a drug can be chosen only based on this, okay, all these three important parameters. So you have to memorize. Okay, so all the best. Thank you.